Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and in this video tutorial, we are going to be assembling this backhoe in SolidWorks. So this backhoe is not something that I created. This is actually provided by the SolidWorks company itself as kind of like a test prep file for their SolidWorks certification. So they provided a PDF of directions, and I have that linked here, and that opens up and looks like this. Okay. So this kind of takes you just step by step, and it doesn't necessarily give you a whole lot of instructions other than pictures that you're going to have to look off of and things labeled. So we're going to be looking off of this and kind of working together to do this. You should already have these files. I provided them for you. They are all numbered just like you see here. They're all colored just like you see here. And what I will recommend is not bringing them all in once. That is the most common mistake that I see students doing, is placing all 20 some of the parts in the assembly at one time, and then it is just chaos to work. So you're going to see that we are going to be doing this bit by bit, starting here by getting this one in the correct spot, and then working from the base on up. Okay, so I'm going to pull this to my other screen. If you take note here, number one, we're going to be placing the origin right in the middle and on the bottom. So in SolidWorks, I'd like you to go and start a new assembly, and this whole entire thing is going to be in inches. So make sure you're in IPS down here in the bottom right-hand corner. And when you actually start a new assembly, it's going to ask you to place something in. If it does not bring this insert component box up, you just have to hit insert component and browse. Okay, then you need to find your backhoe folder, and you'll see here that you have 24 different files. So we're going to be placing number one in first. So I just click on number one, hit open, and place that in. Now, all of these files were not created by me. Again, they were created by SolidWorks. So you don't really know where the origin is located for this individual part. What we can do, however, is check it out just by hitting the drop down and seeing where the planes are. So the front plane runs right through the middle, top plane is on the bottom, and the right plane is also through the middle. I think you're going to see this as being a common occurrence. They did this on purpose so that you can use these planes to our advantage. So the very first part that we put into an assembly is fixed. As you can see, if I try to move it, it says this component is fixed, cannot be moved. Well, we want this to be moved because we need it to be placed so that the origin is right underneath. And as you can see, my origin is not underneath. So we're going to right click on your part and hit float. Now this thing can move. Okay, so if we look back at this picture, you can kind of see the orientation is going left and right. So that's kind of where the front plane is. So that means the origin is right on the bottom. Front plane is going to be even with the front plane, and the origin is going to be cutting right through the right plane here. So with that being said, if I move my mouse over this front plane and select it, I can actually hold in control and select the front plane here. And then I'll get my mate tool. And when I do that, I already have both of them selected. It's going to move this thing back so the front plane is on the front plane. Now, if you did not already hold in control and select those, you can also do that right here just by hitting this drop down, and then you can pick the front plane and front plane there. Okay, we do want them to be coincident, so we'll hit the green check. And now we're going to do the top plane of the entire assembly and rotate around underneath, and that's going to be this bottom piece, which is also the top plane of that part. See, that'll drop right down, green check. And then right plane to right plane. And it'll slide over. Now, by doing that, this should have put the origin right on the bottom in the dead center. Okay, so part number one is good. And you notice here it's fully defined. We don't even have to set it to fixed because we added 3 mates to it. So now we're going to be inserting component number 2. That's going to be this blue piece. And another common thing that students think is that this piece needs to be perfectly centered like that. But if you look at the picture, it's actually about the same length as the red. And that's because there are 2 of these. Okay, there's 2 of these. So this is pretty simple to put in. If you notice in the drop down, they have the front plane at the end there, they have the top plane up top, and the right plane goes right through the middle. So what we're going to be doing here is just kind of taking the top of this and the top of the red, making them even. Okay, I'm going to pull this back, and I'm going to select the side of the red, rotate around, select the end of the blue so that they touch, green check. And now this thing can only move left or right, as you can see. Okay, so here we're going to be using the right plane, which is right in the middle of the blue. And if I do the right plane of the entire assembly, it will center that thing. Okay. Now, you could go insert component, bring another one of these in, and do the same thing over here. You could hold in control and drag this off to copy the part. But I think a faster way of doing this is actually mirroring this part. So in your assembly, you see up here, they kind of compress a lot of the typical feature tools that we see. But up here underneath linear component pattern, there is mirror components. And mirror components basically ask you which plane you want. So if I hit this drop down, we are going to be mirroring across the front plane of the entire assembly. And the component obviously is part number 2. That's the blue one. And the green check. So that was pretty fast. It just places it over here. It saves us a lot of mating. And the more mating you do, the more chances you have of messing it up. So this was pretty nice that we could just mirror it. So now we can go ahead and bring in part number 3. And part number 3, if I go back to this picture, is now this green piece. That green piece is kind of like the stem, or the part that goes up from the base that the seat and everything else builds off of. So we're going to be doing 3 and 4, which is the yellow wedge piece, or the yellow rib piece that's the support. Okay, so 3 first. So let's hit insert component, and we'll bring in 3, hold in shift and select number 4. So bring both of them in, but we'll do 3 first so that we can get that in place before we do this little triangle. So mating this. This is pretty easy. Once again, these are all the same width. So we can just do that side to this side of the red so that they're flush. Okay. We can do this side of the green and this side of the blue so that it's flush this way. And then up and down, we just got to drag this up. We'll click on top of the red, rotate around underneath, and do the bottom of the green. So 3 mates, and that thing is fully defined, and it's locked in right there in the middle. Okay, so for the yellow piece, we're going to go on the top of the red, underneath to the bottom of the yellow, so that this sits right up on top, as you can see. And then we'll do this side of the yellow up against the green, so it's stuck in there. And the last one here is getting this thing centered. So once again, we're going to be using the planes. So if we hit the drop down for 4, okay, you can see that the front plane runs right through the middle of it. So we're going to go front plane of the part 4, that's the yellow piece, and front plane of the entire assembly way up here at the top, and that will center it. Okay, so now 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all fully defined. They're all stuck in place. So if I go back to my picture, we are now done with picture number 1. So it says assembly the base, make sure the origin is positioned correctly. Step 2 says assemble the handle components. Okay, so that's not all of this stuff. That's just the handle components. We already did 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we're at 5. That's the seat. 6 is the kind of the arm of the handle, and then 7 is the actual handle itself. So let's put in the seat first. That's number 5. So insert component, number 5. And we bring that seat in. If you zoom in, you can see there's a little hole right here on that stem piece. And underneath the seat, there's that little rectangle piece that fits right in there. So that's nice and easy to do. So what I'm going to do is get the mate constraint. Since I'm at this view, I'll do the bottom of this rectangle stem. Okay, and the bottom of the green, make them flush. Green check, and you can see that they're the same height. And then we just basically have to do 2 sides of this red to the matching 2 sides in the green. So we'll do this side, rotate around, I'll make that touch this piece. Okay, green check. Now when this thing slides in there, Okay, this wall that I currently have selected, that one, is going to slide in and it's going to touch this wall. Okay, so you need 3 mates on this and on most parts to get them fully defined. And we just did that. So my red seat is now locked in place. Okay, so that's number 5. So let's bring in number 6 and 7. So again, I'm going to hold in Shift and select both of these. Hit open, and we'll place these in. 6 and 7. And once again, this handle here has a little hole underneath it that this piece is going to slip right up inside. So it's pretty much the same process that we just did with the seat. Get your mate constraint, and we'll click right here on this little shoulder and at the bottom of the handle, and it should flip it around so that they are even like that. You do not want it to be like this. Okay, if yours is like that for some reason, that is your mate alignment. You need to click the other option and it will flip-flop it. So it needs to be going the same way that this little piece is. Okay, green check. Then just like we did with the seat, you see there's a little rectangle in there. So this flat wall here, bigger flat wall, is going to be on one of these big flat walls. Okay, it doesn't matter which way it rotates. Green check. And then this thing is going to be sliding back and forth in there, as you can see. So if I do this sidewall here, rotate around to the purple, it's going to be touching that sidewall there. Okay. Now that is stuck on there. So again, you could bring all this in, again, these 2 parts, and you could go through all that mating. Some of you might say, oh, well, why don't we just put it on and mirror it across to the other side? Well, the problem with that is when you mirror something, it's always a mirror image. So if you move this handle, the opposite handle is going to move the same. So here's a little trick that you can do. Over here on the left, if you select 6 and 7 by holding in Shift, we can then right click on these and create a subassembly. So select the option that says Form New Subassembly. So this is basically a smaller assembly inside your entire assembly file. And as you can see right there, now this thing is all one subassembly. Now the nice thing with this is we can then copy this entire thing. So if you hold in Control and you drag one individual part, in this view or this window, you see it copies that one individual part. Well, we don't want to do that. What we want to do is copy that entire assembly. So over here, if we hold in Control and click where it actually has our subassembly, click and hold and drag those into your actual viewing window. Now it copies your entire subassembly. So now we have 2 handles that are all fully defined together, not yet as far as this, but they are constrained to one another. Now, if you look close at the bottom of both of these, there's this little hole, okay? And that hole is going to be lined up right here with this little hole. So an easy way of doing this is getting your mate constraint. And basically, I'm going to select the inside of this. So you're going to do this a lot for the remainder of this assignment. You're going to be selecting this inside wall. If I zoom out, zoom over here, I'll select that inside wall. And when you select 2 circles like that, you notice what it does is it makes them concentric. So even if they're different sizes, it lines up their center points. So that's exactly what we want. We do not want to lock the rotation because we want these handles to be functional and move back and forth. So we'll just hit the green check for now. So this thing can kind of rotate around. It can still move left or right, but you can see this hole is always lined up with that hole. So now we'll just do the outside of the green, rotate around, and do the inside of the purple. And now those 2 will touch one another, green check. And if I get off my mate constraint, you can see here, or mate tool, you can see it just rotates around that. That's exactly what I want. So we're going to do the exact same thing over here to the other side. So inside wall of those cylinders. Green check, outside of the green, inside of the purple. Green check. Okay. Now you have 2 different functional handles, as you can see. Let's Coming back to my picture, we are now done with step 2. So this is where it really does not help us much. Step 3 kind of just goes crazy and it says assemble upper arm components. Well, you got stuff all over the place now. They probably should have had another page in here or another step in here. So we were just at number 7. So let's find number 8. Number 8 is this yellow one. Number 9 is this red one back here, and they are different. The only thing that makes them different is this one little hole back there. Okay, so we're going to put in 8 and 9. Make sure you put 8 on the right side, 9 on the back side or the left side of this thing. So if you want to, I would highly recommend saving here because we now currently have close to 10 different parts on here. And out of those 10 parts, you know, some of them are functional or moving. So this is where your computer starts to slow down. So I would save this if I were you. We are going to be bringing in 8 and 9. So hold in Shift and select both of those. Number 8 is this yellow piece that goes on the front side, and 9 is on the back side. That's the red piece. So same thing as before. You're going to take this hole and line it up right here on the outside of the purple. So get your mate constraint right there on the inside wall, Pretty easy stuff. Now, if that goes inside, you might want to just pull that yellow out. We'll go to the outside of the purple piece, and the inside of the yellow piece, so that they are even. Now that we're here, same thing. Opposite side, purple, the red piece, green check, slide this out, outside of the purple, inside of the red. So I'm sure by now you're starting to get the hang of this. It's starting to move pretty quick. You can see that these two components here can move individually. We could actually solve that problem right now, but that's okay. We'll do that a little bit later. So we now have 8 and 9 in. Let's put 10 in. And if you're looking at that picture, 10 is actually the little pin that goes back here. So if you're looking at 10 and you're kind of wondering, well, how is this even possible? How they built this, it's not technically possible unless one of these pieces actually screwed in somehow. You can't physically put that through things. So this is just a computer version. Let's just do it even though it's not physically possible. So let's just hit mate. We're going to do the cylinder to the inside wall of this hole. Okay, and this you can actually do lock rotation. There's an option right here so that this pin doesn't rotate. And the green check. And then we'll just do the outside of the yellow, rotate around, and we'll go to the inside of the head or the end piece of this pin. Okay, and you can see it popped out the other side, and now it's even over there. So that's not physically possible to, get these inside of that thing, but it's okay. It's green check. So now that's all locked on there. So that is number 10. Bring in number 11 now. Number 11 goes right about here. So mate. Number 11 is kind of just like a spacer. So we'll just do that inside wall to this inside wall. And make sure you're doing it on the red piece, and notice that you have these 2 open holes at the end, and then you have this extra third one. That's where you want it to be. Okay, so we're going to line those up. You can hit lock rotation so this thing does not move. And you want this spacer on the inside, so in between the yellow and the red piece. So we're going to do that inside wall of the red, rotate around to do the inside wall of the blue. Okay, green check. So just like that. Now we can bring in number 12. Number 12 is a green arm that kind of goes back. Okay, and when I say it goes back to this handle and connects right there. So once again, we're just lining up these circles. So inside wall, inside of the blue, green check. You do not have to hit lock rotation. Actually, you should not even hit lock rotation. Then we'll do the outside of the blue, inside of the green, so that they touch one another right there. If we zoom out, the reason why we have to have that spacer in there is because that spacer is the same thickness as this purple piece. Okay, so it knocks this green over just far enough so that it is on the inside of the purple piece. So this is where things start to get cool because you're going to see things move a lot. We go here to this inside wall, to the inside wall, the green. You can see that green piece moves all the way up, kind of connects. You can hit the green check. And if we do this piece to the inside of the green, it's basically not going to do anything because they already are touching. So actually, only applying that one little mate here for this green piece to this is all you need because those kind of work together. So now you can see as you move your handle, it all pivots down here. It's got kind of like an A-frame or a triangle feature to it. So that's kind of your lift. So that is number 12. Now 13, part 13, if you're looking at this picture, see there's a bunch of them. There's a little one here, there's one here, and there's also one way up here. So I don't necessarily know why they made that part 13. To me, I would have put the blue part in next. I would call that part 13. And then part 14 to me would have been these connection pins, okay? Or 15, doesn't really matter because that one could have been a connection pin. So I think they kind of just have their numbers out of order, but it really doesn't matter. So let's just go in order so you're not too confused. You're just going to have some pins in your way. So we'll do 13, and that's going to be here, here, and back there. We're going to be bringing that in 3 different times. So insert component, part 13. I'm going to place that in here. Okay, so to get all 3 of them, I'm going to hold in control. I'm going to click and hold on this part and drag it over. So there's going to be one there, one there. Then the other one is up here at this connection point towards the top of the next piece that comes in. Okay, so we'll bring this up into this area. It does not connected. It doesn't get connected to these. It just kind of floats up here for right now. So for this piece, let's go inside wall of this hole, cylinder, part 13. We can hit lock rotation, green check. Then the outside of the purple handle, rotate around and underneath the head of part 13. So that little extra bit right there is where part 15 is going to be connecting to. So let's do that same thing here for this connection piece. So inside wall to the cylinder, lock rotation, and then the outside of the green to the underneath wall of that pin. Okay. So those are now in place. So this one is still floating there, and that's going to come in play later on. So let's now do part 14. Part 14 goes right here, this connection spot, and this is a little bit longer because we have that spacer in between there. So mate, same process here, inside wall to cylinder, lock rotation. Notice I'm locking the rotation of any pin. Then the outside of the green and the underneath side of the red pin head, and that's stuck in there. That's the only one for 14. So now let's bring in 15. Okay, 15 actually connects back here to this first handle. So it's got this hole right here. So we've got the mate. We're going to do inside wall, rotate around, and we're going to zoom in, and we're actually going to be clicking the cylinder of that pin. Okay, no lock rotation because this is an arm. Green check. and we're going to be doing the inside of the blue to the inside of the purple, and it slides right in there. So you can kind of see how these were, to me, labeled out of order. I would have put that blue in originally before I put these pins in, because we still have this part 13 floating here that's been waiting for us, but oh well. So this one actually goes to the outside of this, and the extra hangs on the inside. So let's put part 13 in here. We'll click on that part, the cylinder part, and the inside wall. Lock rotation, because this is a pin. Green check. Then I'm going to drag this thing out because it was inside my part. We're going to do the outside of the blue, rotate around so the inside of the head. Okay. We want this thing hanging out to the left or towards the inside of our body, as you can kind of see. So that was now part 15 we're up to, we're done with. So now let's put in part 16. Okay, and part 16 connects right here to this blue pin. I'm going to zoom in, select the inside of that hole, rotate around a little bit, select the cylinder of that pin, green check, and we're going to do the inside of the purple piece to the inside of the blue, green check. So now that's connected on there. So if you're looking back at our picture, we are now done with step number 3. Okay, this craziness is all done. So step 4 now moves to the lower arm components. And this, again, it looks confusing, but a lot of this stuff is repeated. Okay, so it just has the 8 and 9. It's just kind of showing you, hey, just in case you don't see the colors for some reason, you're colorblind or whatnot, here are those parts. They're labeled. So it's just kind of showing you the upper portion of what we already did. So this part right here is this portion right here. Okay, so really all we're doing is this right there. All right, so we already have 13 in there. We're now moving past 15. We're going all the way to part 16. Okay, actually part 16, I apologize, we already have done. So they don't even have part 16 labeled, which they should. Okay, that's this purple one. So 17 is this spacer here. And then you can see way back here, they even have part 10, which is, like I said, way out of order. It's just because all the spacers that they have, they just have connection pins all labeled, and they didn't want to duplicate these pins. Okay, so the next part we're going to be putting in is part 17. So again, you might want to save it, and let's insert component and part 17. '17 is going to be connecting right here to this purple piece, the hole in the middle, and it's going to be on the side that's closer to us. So if you zoom in, inside wall to inside wall, since this is a spacer or a pin, we can do lock rotation, green check, and the inside of the purple to the inside of that spacer piece, green check. So now that's stuck on there. Okay, so that one is done. Let's go to 18. 18 is another spacer that goes on the opposite side of what we just did. Kind of goes back here. So mate, inside hole to inside hole, lock rotation, drag this thing back out. We'll do the inside flat wall to the inside of the purple. So now 18 is done. So let's look at this picture and kind of see where we're at. 19 is a spacer that goes in between the yellow and red piece. Okay. '19 we're going to be bringing in. I'm just going to let that hang out right here. So there are two holes at the ends of the yellow and red. This is going to go for the first hole. Inside wall to inside wall. Lock rotation. Green check. I'm going to do the end of this spacer and the inside of the yellow so it slides over. And now if I do the inside of that spacer again and the inside of that hole for the red piece, this thing should pop up there. And since you already locked the rotation once, you don't really need to lock it again. It should be fine. Green check. Okay. So as you can see, it's already moving. It's good. It's all kind of connected together. So now looking back at this, we are all the way up to 19. So let's see what 20 is. 20 is this pin that goes all the way through. But if you notice, they kind of backtracked a little bit, and green one, number 12, is added again here to the front. So let's bring in number 12 first. Okay, pop those in so that our spacer will actually fit, or our pin will actually fit. So we're going all the way back to number 12. And yeah, I guess you could have just copied that one. Some of you are wondering why I didn't do that. I kind of forgot. So I will do that here. I'll just hold in control and drag this over. Then we're basically just going to be lining all these up. So that inside to this inside, outside of the yellow to the inside of the green. And same thing over here. So that inside wall to the inside of the other part 12. We want that thing out there. So inside of the green to the outside of the red. Okay. So now we have our two little arms on there. Now let's put in our pin, and our pin is number 20. Insert component. So select 20 and hit open. Place that right here. Same process, we're going to be doing the cylinder of number 20, middle cylinder, and that hole, the inside wall of the hole, and you can do lock rotation. Do the outside of this green arm, rotate around, and then the flat part underneath the head of the pin. So now 20 is locked in place. I'm going to pull my picture back over here, see where we're at. So we currently have pretty much everything other than this end. So let's look at this. So we have all this. Okay, the purple part's kind of still hanging out there. And we have those spacers. So now we just need to bring that down, line that purple part up with the holes of the yellow and red piece, and then put in the pin for number 10. So again, this is just going to be lined up with those. So if you want to, you can move these green, kind of rotate them down, get them out of your way a little bit. And now we're going to do the mate. Inside of this hole of the yellow, inside of this spacer piece, and it will rotate it back. You don't need to do lock rotation because we already locked it on this purple piece. Okay, and you don't even need to do like the inside walls because they're already set to that. So as you can see, it rotates. So now we can put in that pin, and that pin is number 10. It's an old one. That goes right there. So let's do the cylinder of pin 10 and this inside wall, and we'll do lock rotation because it's a pin. I'm going to drag this out a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Outside of this yellow piece, rotate around underneath, and we're going to do underneath the head of that pin. All right, so this thing's starting to come together, as you can see. So you move a handle, kind of pivots like that. Move the other handle, the whole entire thing goes up and down. I'm going to bring that picture back over here. And we are now done with step 4. So we move on to step 5. Step 5 is actually the assembly of the shovel component that's down here. This part really confuses people because this shovel looks like it's actually upside down, so I see a lot of kids insert this and assemble it backwards. So when they go to shovel, it's actually pushing the dirt away, not pulling it back towards you. So we're going to make sure that this is actually facing us. So this part should be facing towards the seat. And you can kind of see here's our green arms coming down. Those were those part 12s. And this is that purple piece that comes down here. So we are all the way back, I believe, at part 21. So let's bring in 21. And it's probably going to have 2 holes right here. So those holes are going to be lined up with the green pieces, which will solidify those greens so they're not flip-flopping all over the place. And then we'll put in part 20. So again, it looks like they kind of have these out of order. You know, you put in part 20, which will connect through. 22 will connect this back piece. So we're going to work on this back piece first, and then we'll go up here to this part. So let's go insert component. And we are actually on 20 and 21. Okay, so there we go. So 21 is actually the backhoe. And you see how that part is facing towards the seat. Like I said, a lot of students actually assemble this backwards and it's going the opposite way. So we want to make sure that it's actually facing towards the seat itself. So we're going to do the mate. And probably the reason they do that is because this thing actually needs to be kind of like this. It needs to be like that. The green are actually going to be out past that purple. Okay, so we're going to do this portion of the green to this top piece of that little bucket. Zoom back out, kind of like that. Green check. But we want to make sure it's on the inside. So we're going to click this outside of the bucket, rotate around to the inside of the green. Slides in there like that. Green check. Now that I'm on this same view here, do that inside cylinder to inside cylinder to lock that in place. Then we'll put that pin through. Select that cylinder portion. Right here on the inside, we can lock that rotation. Drag this thing out. We'll do the outside of the green to underneath that head on the flat part. So now that's stuck in there. And then, while we have this here, let's do this cylinder, that inside wall of that hole. I drag my purple out a little bit, drag this down. That's actually going to be lined up with this inside wall. Okay, right like that. So they are straight across from one another, as you can see. Green check. All right, so now let's look at what components we need to bring in, because once again, I think they kind of have these somewhat out of order. You see that it says 20 is right here to this pin, and then they have 22. I guess that might be a sleeve that goes over top. So we have 21 and 20, and we kind of need these extra things in here. So let's try to bring in 22. We'll just go in order. Maybe I was wrong at saying they were out of order. So this looks like it's like kind of a little sleeve that goes over that pin. So we'll bring in 22, and then we'll move on to 23 and 24, which are just spacers. Insert 22. And yeah, I was correct. This is just like a little sleeve. So they did have the numbering correct. So we'll get our mate constraint. We'll go on the inside wall here and this cylinder. And we can lock that rotation. It really doesn't matter if it's locked or not, because that would just kind of rotate on there. And now this part is a little hard to see, so I'm going to slide this over. I'm going to click that flat part there, rotate around, and that's going to be touching the inside of the bucket. So right there. Now 22 is in place. So let's go ahead and put in 23 and 24. very close to being done as far as the assembly goes. So this is 23, this goes on this side, 24 goes on that side. Okay, now we don't have that pin in here yet, but we can still work on this without that pin. We'll just go the little cylinder to inside, lock rotation, and then the outside wall to what it's going to touch, which is the inside of that bucket. Do the same process over here. Lock rotation, outside of the wall to the inside of the bucket. Now let's bring in number 10. That's the pin. I believe this is the last part we actually have to put in. So let's do the cylinder and the inside wall of the hole. Lock rotation. We're going to do the outside wall of the bucket and underneath the head, this flat side right here. So that pin now slides into place, green check. And as far as the assembly goes, assembling all of the parts are now done. So you can kind of move these handles around and see how this actually works. Kind of moves that back and forth. This will actually move it up or down and extend it out. And yeah, if you move this around a lot, it does kind of make it go out of whack like that. So you want to kind of get this back into a shape that it needs to be. I would recommend saving it here. And if we look back at this PDF of directions, we're now done with step 5. So moving on to step 6, this is kind of something that they might actually have you do on that certification. And what it has you do here is move the handles into different positions. So it says position 1 and calculate the center of mass. So position 1 basically shows you both handles are vertical here. They're straight up and down. Okay, so the way of doing this is actually constraining those handles so that they are either perpendicular to the top plane, or maybe they are parallel to a vertical side, like this side right here. And if you go down to step 7, the last thing, they basically say that they want you to move the handles to 2 different positions, and they want you to calculate the center of mass. Okay, so if the center is this right here going straight up and down, you're going to have to move these later on. So you can kind of see there's center marks cutting right through these different parts. So that kind of gives us a little hint here of how we can do this. So that also means there is a plane that goes right through the middle of these lengthwise. So let's try to actually put them into position 1. So if I select this part, that is way up here, that is part number 6. If I move my mouse over this, you can see that there is a top plane that cuts right through the middle. Okay, so I am going to have the top plane there, and if I move up here to my other subassembly, number 6 was the other arm, hit the drop down. Again, I'm going to hold in control and select both of those top planes, kind of like what we did a long time ago. And with both of those top planes selected, I can now go to the mate tool, or mate constraint, and it automatically makes them coincident. So I'm actually going to make them coincident or parallel. I think it should do the exact same thing, but then you can hit the green check. I'll hit this drop down here, and you could either do those planes in the middle, or what we can do is just click one of these flat sides, and then we just need another flat side that's going the same direction. So maybe the end or the side of the green, doesn't really matter. If we select that piece, notice coincident, it's going to mess it all up. So if we just have it to parallel, it should have it work correctly, but this looks like it's all messed up. So let's just hit the green check and see what happens. Okay, so this kind of looks like it's moved around or messed. So let's hit this rebuild, see if it fixes it. There you go, fixes it. So that is position 1. So if we hit Control 8, that side view is the exact same side view as in the picture, and we can no longer move everything. It is fully defined. So it says to calculate the center of mass. Let's go up to Evaluate and Mass Properties. And the center of mass right here has the X, Y, and Z value. And if we go all the way back to the original document that I gave you, the original document has that right here. So position 1, X, Y, and Z, we are correct. So position 2, we should be getting a different center of mass. So I'm going to leave this right here. And position 2, as you can see, has 8 degrees for the handle with the green connected to it, 8 degrees back from the vertical middle, and 14 degrees for this other handle going forward. So I'm going to get off the center of mass, and I'm going to scroll all the way down here on my left side, and you see it says mates. Okay, underneath the mates, we can basically see everything that we did, and there are a lot of mates in this. So if we go way down here, you can see that it has the 2 different parallel ones. So what SolidWorks wants to see you be able to do on the certification is not only make different mate constraints, but they also want to be able to see that you can edit your constraints or delete your constraints. So here, I'm going to just delete this one. So right click and hit delete. I'll do that for my other parallel one as well. And now it's like we never did those. Okay, so if I rotate around slightly, this one with the green connected to it, that's the back handle, that needs to be moved back 8 degrees. And this other one needs to be moved forward 14 degrees. And let's just kind of look at that again. So the one with blue goes forward 14. The one with the green connected to it goes back 8. And that's right here from the center. That center is also where the origin is. So if we look back, see where the origin is directly underneath. And I was actually wrong in saying that because the center would be right here. So that's just kind of coming off of this pivot point straight up. So what we need to do is just get the mate constraint. We want the plane that goes through the middle of this. So we're going to hit the drop down. Don't want the origin selected. Hit this drop down, go into your first subassembly. And that is part number 6. We're going to go from our top plane, that's the one that cuts this way, and we just want a vertical surface that goes straight up like this. It doesn't matter if it's through the middle or if it's here. So we can actually look at some of these original planes, and the right plane will work fine. Okay, the right plane of the entire assembly will work. So if you do that, it automatically thinks it wants parallel, but what we want to do is come down here and you see it says angle. So if you click on that button, now the angle is actually enabled, and we want that to be 8 and green check. So now it is 8 degrees from here going back. Now we're going to do that same process to the other handle. So this time we want our other subassembly. So notice I compress this first one and I decompress the second subassembly. And I'm going to come down and select the top plane of the other handle, or the other arm. And once again, I'll scroll back up and I will do the right plane of this entire thing. And again, it makes it parallel. We don't want to do that. We actually want to hit angle, and we want to type in 14 for 14 degrees. Okay? So we hit the green check. So now this is in position 2. So let's evaluate this once again. Mass properties. See if we have the correct center of mass. So here for our X value, we have that correct. Y value correct, and our Z is now correct. So as far as this assignment, we are now done. If you want to, you can actually edit those mates. You can change those. You can scroll all the way down here. You can actually mess around and change those angles. But if you still have these angle constraints on here, this thing is no longer going to move anymore. So if you want it to be able to move just to mess around since you're all the way finished, you can delete both of these angles and you should be good to go. You can just delete them. And now this can move again. So hopefully you learned a bunch here, a lot of repeated steps, but it's a good process to understand because you can actually see something functional be created and you can actually have some value to that.